I'm excited that we're going to have a little bit of a, call it a mini series here. I don't want to say practical applications of AI in terms of like, here's how to use different AI systems, but I think of it more as like a reframing of how to use it. So for example, last week when we were talking about, I've got this problem that I need to get an answer to and a solution to, and you would go to Google and you would type in and say, oh, here's the answer, right? And at best that was like, here's what you need to do to go solve it then. Go buy this product, or here's what the answer is to
Or
your
here's a
question.
link to then go do the work to find how to solve it.
Google isn't a solution provider in the way that a ChatGPT or a Claude can say, here's what you need to do. Now I can go do it. Google can't go do it. And thinking about what business owners or anybody can do now with that AI support really becomes a totally new way of thinking about business. So you started to talk about headless commerce. I had never heard this before. So I think it would be worthwhile that we kind of get into what that is, and then specifically what it means in terms of now what you can do with AI.
Yeah, so let's first define what I would say commerce would be as opposed to headless commerce. So commerce would be like a monolithic application. What I mean by that is mono means one. It would be one app. Like Shopify is like a monolith in itself, where you have a Shopify website that's like one application to then have a storefront. What headless means is you don't need to have one application to do the things that you want to do. You can have multiple applications that use components of Shopify in this case. So let me unpack that a little bit, because I know that could be confusing for someone. Like, why would you want to do that? When you use a monolithic application, by nature, there has to be a ton of parameters in there, because you can't have, it's not like a free form where you can just write anything you want. And some applications you could drop HTML in there, but for the most part, you're constrained by plugins, the look and feel, the schema, which means basically like the way fields are laid out in there and the way they're presented. So Shopify out of the box, like you have like a certain look and feel, and you could customize that look and feel with what's called CSS code. It stands for cascading style sheets, but basically what that means is like you can apply a style on these things, but the underlying code and the functionality you can't really change. So you can't change the experience, you can change the look. Okay. So with headless commerce, you're able to control both. You can control a bespoke experience ideal for your customer and take it completely out of your Shopify store. Where is this applicable? I'll give you two real examples of how I'm using this today. The first one is the most recent one that I've built, which would be our beer club membership website.
I'm a member.
Thank you. A loyal member for years. So we wanted to create this experience for these beer club members. When they log in, it feels different. So we created this upgraded membership from the base membership that we had to what's called the Founders Club. The Founders Club, you pay a yearly fee, you get a bunch of perks with it. So you're now able to then log into this Founders Club portal. It recognizes your Shopify tag because it integrates with Shopify.
Shopify tag being like my customer ID.
Yeah, so when you're in, if anyone that's worked with Shopify before, if you haven't, Shopify has tags on both products and customers, and those tags are essentially like labels. You know, it's a way to like label something. And then from a headless commerce perspective, it allows us to identify a customer, not just by their name. That can you could have the same name as someone else. You could have email. Does that change? So by a tag to say, okay, I'm identifying you as a beer club member of this Founders Club. So I'm going to let you get access to this portal. So now once you log in, then it displays your products exact way I want it to. It can give you different experiences. It can curate a list of recommended beers in this case for you based on an algorithm I developed through AI to say like, I don't want the out of the box algorithm, the recommended choice, the most popular. I want to look at your history. So I look at things like, what's the most recent things that you purchased? Captain Obvious stuff. On the homepage, there's actually 3 questions that pop up, and they're new every month. Well, the answers to those questions then determine on the next page what we're going to show you. So that's another thing. The third thing.
Wait, I want to hold on that for a second. Because that seems like a good example of in these more monolithic structures within Shopify, there wouldn't be an option for, hey, do you want to ask 3 unique questions to your e-commerce customer? And that's something that you thought of and said, I want to put this in there, and then used whatever AI you were using to create this to just build it into the system. Is that right?
So basically I said, I need to create questions that will determine the styles of beer that I could present to you that you'd be most interested in. And this applies to us because we have like 15 different styles of beer. We have 4 electrolytes and we have merchandise. We have all this stuff that we could present to you. And instead of listing everything, you could get overwhelmed and not buy anything. I'm curating a selection that I think is applicable for you. But I also had to balance. You've been a beer club member for years, right? You clearly know that we have Sunshine State.
Yeah.
You clearly know that we have some of these beers, but you may or may not have put those in your cart before. And if you haven't, I also created a way to make an assumption to say, like, you've been a beer club member, these beers have been around, you haven't chosen them yet. I'm not going to present them to you. It doesn't make sense.
Right.
So then there's a newness factor of like, okay, well, we just came out with a yuzu beer, or we just came out with a watermelon wheat beer. Well, I might weigh those. So basically it looks at the scores. And then I also said, well, let me look at your Klaviyo profile. Klaviyo is an email marketing platform that's separate. A lot of e-commerce brands use it, and dig into like, what have you engaged with? What content? Like if we're creating content that is about hobby beer, are you clicking on that because you like the title? So then that weighs in the score. So basically created this like bespoke algorithm that presents these beers to you. It's probably like way overkill for what it is, but it's an example of something you could do. Now, could you do that in Shopify? You can make an argument that you could, and then you could put a plugin in, but it's still going to be limited to the look and feel that you're creating it in. And yes, you can create custom code in Shopify, and there's a lot of flexibility there. But what I'm talking about, you're still going to have this wonkiness of the Shopify ecosystem, and now you're merging this other experience there. And for me, it was just better to create a separate experience so a customer can log in and have the same thing. So that's an example of like one thing. So you log into this, it's not a Shopify website. It's a regular website that has a Google authenticated login. If you've already used this email before in Shopify, it'll connect those dots and it'll pull your purchase history in, all that stuff. So from a consumer standpoint, it almost feels like, hey, I'm in the Shopify ecosystem, but you're not.
Right.
But it's pulling all the important data in, but it could pull all these other data points in and then have the real custom functionality that's applicable for you.
Is it that here's all this information that was in Shopify, and there was a limited amount of ways in which that information could be utilized on the business side, on the customer side, but what you've done now is create I don't want to say like a different interface to that, because there was always interface there, but you're pulling data from multiple different places that might have even been outside of Shopify to change what that customer experience is, as well as to what the business side of, here's what I can understand about that customer and recommend to them and support them.
Yeah, that's essentially what it does. So it can give you this fluid experience, and also just to like double click on memberships. So when someone gets a membership on, really, I would say most e-commerce sites are built on Shopify. There's like 10 different vendors that have apps, and those apps is what we all use. Like we all meaning like brands like me.
What's an example of one of those apps that you're talking about?
Skio, Loop, Recharge. So these apps are subscription-based applications that have a experience that is typically what's called framed in, meaning like it's really constrained by like the look and feel, and that's why you'll start to see a lot of subscription websites looking the same because they're using the same provider, so they're the same look and feel, and it's fairly restrictive because it needs to apply to everyone. Basically, I was able to take all of that too and use what's called the API, which stands for Application Program Interface, to then talk to the subscription provider, talk to Shopify, talk to Klaviyo, pull all those things together to now create this experience that in the past would have taken a ton of time, and now you can like build it in a day.
So you're building the API.
No, the API exists. Like that's important too. If there's no API there, then you can't really extract this information.
Okay.
Most applications have APIs, like almost everything has an API today. And I would argue that if you don't, it's like your business is at risk. Like on a side tangent, I was looking at building an app for my son for giving him screen time when he walks on the treadmill.
Oh, okay.
So basically for every step he takes or every mile he walks, like he would be able to get time. So in that case, I was like, the first thing I did is we have a Peloton treadmill. So I looked at, does Peloton have an API? Yes, they do. So now I could pull his profile and grab his stats real time. Okay, so that's good. Then I'm like, okay, we use this thing called RPact, which controls his screen time. RPact does not have an API. So I'm unable to then, even though I have the data from Peloton, I can't connect it to change his screen time. What I could do is create a dashboard and say, here's how much you earned, and then we go manually change it. But that kind of defeats the purpose of the automation. So then I was like, okay, well, what about screen time, Apple's application? and they do have an API, you have to get authorization to it, and there's other stuff, but it is possible to be able to do that.
Right.
And I think that'd be really applicable for a lot of people that want to get their kids healthy and they're on the screen. In this case, it would apply to Peloton, but it could apply to like really anything with an API, you know?
I think that is a freaking fantastic use case example, right? There's a lot of people that listen to this podcast that aren't necessarily business entrepreneurs that everyone can relate to that. I'm thinking of like the gold sticker chart that I had as a kid. Like, here's what you did the dishes, you get a star. And then, you know, at the end of the summer, you're going to get to go to Chuck E. Cheese or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like this is the 2.0, 3.0 version of that kind of stuff. And it has the headless commerce comparison in terms of like all that information was available, but there was no one connecting it because it would have been really expensive to figure out how to do it. And now it's not expensive anymore. It just takes asking the right questions.
Correct. And in that case, like to better explain how headless commerce applies to like a non-beverage brand, right? You can then take all your stats from Peloton, you could put them in an app, and then you could tie that in with like your MyFitnessPal. You could tie that in with your Garmin watch, your Apple, and you could start to see, okay, I burned this many calories and this is what I'm supposed to get. And here's what I ate. And you could build your whole like wellness app in probably a day. Like you could do all that stuff, right? Because it's all connected. So it'd be an example of it being headless in the sense that like you're taking in all these applications and you're really getting the data Peloton's providing to you, but they're providing you a lot of stuff you don't really need or look at. Like it's just giving you the stuff that you need that's applicable to you.
I don't know if this will work, but let me throw out an idea to you and see how you would approach it in this framework. So, and I'm thinking about the recommendation algorithm that is essentially surfacing itself in this beer club membership idea of like, hey, we can see this is what Dakota has liked, and so we would recommend you might like these. Everybody's familiar with a recommendation type of algorithm, Netflix, Amazon, whatever. You bought this, you might also like this. You watch this, whatever. Sometimes what is frustrating to me is, say on social media, you start getting served stuff. You're like, I don't like this. Like, why? What part of the algo somewhere was like, you would like this? And it's like, I don't like that at all. If you wanted to create like your own recommendation algorithm for your own personal interests, you could do it now in a way that was never possible before by saying, here's what I read, here's what I listen to, here's what I watch or whatever. And so it's not just Spotify saying this is what you would like, but it's looking at your broader interest set, and you could really control what's being recommended to you and then tweak it as you go. And it would probably be better than an off-the-shelf type of recommendation system that you would get by being a subscriber to Amazon. So it seems like you agree. So how would you think about that in this context?
So in this, so there's two things. One is I'd say like Instagram and the applications are getting better at telling you, like there's a feature in Instagram now, as an example, that you can see what it thinks, here's why you're getting served that. And you could delete it. So that's good. So they're giving you more control of that and there's more transparency. I built a personal like AI assistant app, and in that app, to your point, what I did is I put in, I found a news API that's just a general API. I think it's called like the news API. And in the back end, in the admin section of the app, I put in, it gave me all the like standard, like, do you like technology, sports, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, I want information on like CPG. I want information on like AI regarding to like retail, you know, like, so I create this open field search. So I'd like put in what I wanted there, and now it'll go look for those articles and I'll prioritize those. So that's just a simple example of like how to do it. Anyone can do this. This is the crazy thing. And like probably the time that it would take you to listen to this podcast, assuming you have like Cloud Code or you have something set up, you can say, I need to create an API, news API. I want an admin interface, and I want to put in there my likes and dislikes, and I want to feed me the news at 6 a.m. every day and give me a push notification, and relatively have it done pretty quickly.
Yeah. And not just the news, but the news that you are most specifically interested in.
Like, correct. So yeah, that's why it'd be like this open field search that I didn't click on technology per se, because I wanted really specific technology. I'm not interested in everything technology.
Right. It's really hard for me sometimes to put into words when you make this realization how profound of a switch it could be. Everybody's had the experience where they've used some system somewhere and it's just like, it's good, but it's not how I would have built it. Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you could do it now. You could rebuild that system that you mostly love to make it exactly the way that you want it without having any experience in coding or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, another example of this is this weekend I rebuilt our contract manufacturing website. Literally, like when I say a day, I mean like maybe like 2 hours, and then was tinker with it like on and off. And that's kind of the nice thing about this is like you can always be on the side, like doing a prompt, and it works. It's not instant. So like things take a little bit, right? And then you could tweak things.
Yeah.
So built this CRM system of leads that come in through this contract manufacturing website, the scoring system. Then I was like, well, if we want to send an NDA to someone, how do we do that effectively without having to subscribe to like a DocuSign? So figured out, found an API for that. So it takes a document, and instead of paying like $200 a month or $300 a month, that because we don't use it that much. And that's how a lot of these subscriptions are. You know, you pay for them, but you don't use them. It's 27 cents per document. So it's pay per usage. So like we might send out like 3 NDAs a month. So I'm paying less than $1 now to have that signed NDA, that convenience of it. So I stood all that up and then basically pushed it to, and I don't mean to get too technical for folks, but I pushed it to something called GitHub. And GitHub is this repository where you can basically hold your base code, and then you can invite people to it. So I invited Erin, who's not technical on her team. And when I say that loosely, she's pretty technical compared to the average person, but like she's not a coder. And basically I set her up with Claude Code on her computer and gave her access to this repo, connected the repo to her machine. And now like literally yesterday, she built like an FAQ page in like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And then she was able to post it. Now she could just like take control of the website and do whatever she wants with it, because now she has access to the repo. And if I need to go in there and help her with something, it's all this like centralized code. So like it sounds overwhelming to folks, but if you're just curious enough to dedicate a couple of hours a day for like 5 days to learn how to do this, and you don't even need that much. If you're just curious enough to give this a little time and like dig into like, how do I do it? You're going to be blown away. Like anyone can do this. And that's the thing that I tell folks is I'm like, I don't understand. In real life, I meet very seldomly anyone that's doing any of this stuff. And yeah, the answer is, well, yeah, I mean, you're more technical, blah, blah. And I get it. Like, it's not overwhelming to me to be curious and dive into this stuff. I'm telling you, once you get in there, you'd be building apps just as fast as I am. Like, there's nothing I'm doing that it's like, oh my God, this is crazy. Now, I do have the ability to kind of like see how things connect because I've built software before. But for the most part, like you're not building the stuff that I'm building, like brewery operating systems and like crazy technical things that all connect to one another. You build it, you can build a Peloton thing I talked about in a day.
What this does is it democratizes solutions for small businesses in terms of, hey, an Anheuser-Busch could have paid to build all this. They probably have, right? But you couldn't afford that. Capital, time, labor, but now you can do it and be on par with them, if not better, in terms of like, this system works for me.
And just the time, man, that you're saving, because by the time I explain things, so the way code was done or deployments, like you'd have a project manager and you'd have a scope call, and the project manager would then have to decipher everything you said. And then they would create what's called sprints, and those sprints would last a week, and they would launch something, and then there'd be a review, and like all that stuff's important to do reviews and all that. But now it's like, instead of explaining what you want, you can literally like type it in there and get it done and then tweak from there. You know, it's like, it's so wild. Right. I don't see enough folks being curious about it, and maybe they don't need to be, and maybe this doesn't interest them, but I think it's fun.
That's a good spot to end because it is fun. All right. More to come.